My dad, Charles Redcorn, who is an Osage tribal member, he was born back in 1936. And when he was young, he preferred to hang out with the elders. Had a lot of land. They had what they had their little really nice apartment in downtown Pawhuska, which was all the rage because it was built in 1921, and they moved in probably around 1926, 27. And he had cattle, so he was like a cowboy and an Indian too at the same time. But he had a lot of land and a lot of money. He also had a lot of cars, and he had a wardrobe that was like 40 or 50 suits that were just from the finest tailored that you could have, because all of the tailors, like from New York City and Italy or whatever, they moved to Pawhuska to set up shop because that's where all the money was, and that's where all the and back then they charged Osage prices. White people prices was less, and if an Osage came in there, the price upped, probably triple, quadruple. The funeral homes and the morticians and stuff would charge outrageous prices for the funeral and for the coffins and stuff for the Osages, not for the whites. So he heard all these stories that were going on, and he also heard about all these murders because my great-grandfather, Raymond Redcorn Sr., was poisoned during this time. And my dad never got to meet him. They couldn't trust the local preacher. They couldn't trust the local doctors. They couldn't trust the morticians. They couldn't trust the police officers. They couldn't trust their neighbors. They couldn't trust anybody except their insulated Osage family that they relied on each other, and they kept their culture. My dad said the reason they survived is they held on to the Osage culture and kept doing it, so he didn't die with them. And so the younger kids kept it going, and we are still here, even though they tried to, kill us or genocide us and all that kind of stuff. So he learned all of that, all about the 20s and the early 1900s and the late 1800s and all those stories. He had it in his head, and when he retired, I think when he was like 55, 56 years old, he said, I'm going to write a book. And he wrote A Pie for February. He sat down and wrote it, and it got published by the OU Press. He went on a tour. He was a Newbery Fellow. He was the artist in residence at Dartmouth College, North Carolina, and he went on speaking tours, and all the academics loved his book, and then anybody else that read it loved it too. And what happened recently is when they made the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, when they were doing research on it, Martin Scorsese was reading all the different books, and he read my dad's book, and he was like, this is great. This is a great novel. And he goes, this helps us bring alive the Osage people in the movie. But what was great is, David Gran, the guy that wrote Killers of the Flower Moon book, when he was doing his research, he read my dad's book, and he called my dad up, and then he came up to Osage County and spent like a week or 10 days with my dad and drove around to all the places in my dad's book. And then my dad introduced him to a lot of people in the Osages, and then that helped him do more research and for his book. And so his book is great, and it's written differently than my dad's because it's more of a crime detective novel, and it's really, my dad's book is based on fact, but it's fictitious characters and it's a novel. His is all fact, and he names the names. Scorsese's 80 years old, so he's around my dad's generation. Well, he identified with it in that he grew up in Little Italy. When he read it, it paralleled to him how crime-ridden Little Italy was, and it was a very tough neighborhood, and you had to get through it. And he saw people got killed, and it was just mafia and related and things like that, and he related to that, but he also couldn't understand how the human beings that were in Pawhuska could actually kill other human beings for their land and for their money. And to him, it was very evil. It was like, if people would say, if you believe in the devil, these people were the devil, because they didn't consider Osage as human beings. And that was one of the things that struck Scorsese, is that he couldn't understand how they would come out and say, oh, I'm your best friend and I'm really helping you, and then kill you and your family. You know, like go down and kill your family. And that's what, that's happened in, my family, and it's happened in a lot of other families, that the people that killed us were our neighbors or married into the family, and they killed everybody else off, and lo and behold, the only one that's alive is that white person and inherits all the money. And so that happened a lot. And so Scorsese he wanted to really dive deep into that and tell the story on screen. Anybody else that wants to direct a movie that has to do with indigenous people needs to first go and talk to the leaders of the indigenous people, talk to the elders, and sit down with them and have dinner. And that's what he did with the Osages, and ask questions and let the people talk. And don't interrupt them, don't try to correct them, don't say, well, I don't think you're correct on this. I don't think, I know what you're saying, but this is not what we're doing. But to listen, sit down and listen. And that's what a lot of indigenous people do. They let people talk and they listen before they interrupt them. And so he went out and he met with the Osages, had dinner with them, and went to the different communities and sat down with everybody and listened to people stand up and tell their story about, like it would be me. I would tell my family's story, and he would listen. And Chief Jim Gray from 2002, 2010, he got up and told Scorsese, he wasn't very far from him at one of these meetings, and he said, I want to make sure that you don't do a white savior movie, and I want to make sure that you tell the truth, and that you tell the truth not from a white point of view, but from the Osage point of view. And he took that to heart, and in the middle of, because he was starting off as a white savior movie, and he changed it to do something that was more like my dad's book. And that's where Pipe February came in. It gave the Osage characters color, and it gave all the different references that my dad had in the book, all of his descriptions and things, that they use. A lot of different stuff that's in the movie is coming from my dad's book that is characteristic of Osages. And it helped him understand that more, but also him getting out with the Osages and talking to them. So I'm saying anybody that wants to try to do an indigenous film on indigenous people, to first go and talk to their leaders and their elders and get their point of view on what they want to see, and then they can start working from there to do the film that they want to do, or a movie, TV series, or even writing a book. Because everybody was real skeptical when he first got it, and there was a lot of Osages that were like, man, this is not going to be good. We don't care how great of a director he is. This could turn it still into a fiasco where it just comes from a viewpoint of a white person, and the story is not really told like it should be. But then he reached out, and everybody started feeling comfortable. When I was at Cannes and I was coming out of the hotel, I was walking, and it was the day after the showing, and other people that got tickets were directors from other countries and really prestigious directors, people that I didn't know. And one director who was African, he goes, "You were in the movie yesterday?" And I go, "Yes." He goes, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." He goes, I loved it, and he got real teary-eyed. He goes, I know it's the Osage's story, but it's my story too, because we were all colonized. And that happened to me 4 or 5 times while I was walking around, in the hotel or eating dinner. I had people coming up that were from other countries that were going, from Malaysia or from Vietnam, and that were directors from those countries or actors, and in their accents were just so emotional, and they were like, this story needs to be told. I'm glad it's going to be international, because this is our story too. This is our story as indigenous people, because they were all colonized too. You all know, and the people that are watching this, tribal leaders out there, they know what's happening, and it's getting worse now. And so hopefully this movie will help, and hopefully it'll help Oklahoma. Hopefully it'll help the Oklahoma, legislators look at themselves and say, hey, and other people that are fighting the tribes. I'm not going to say names specifically, but there are some state leaders that are fighting the tribes constantly. And hopefully maybe after this it'll come out and maybe they'll say, well, maybe we're doing the wrong thing. But that's one hope. It was Scorsese. He went and ingratiated himself and asked permission and talked to everybody in the community before he started filming. And it helped him. He even rewrote a lot of stuff after that. And then again, my dad's book helped out immensely too.